Will the blue light come on, Rachel? On the camera? Oh. You ready now? Okay. I would like to call the September 27th council meeting to order. First item is the approval of the agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
With addition of item 610.
On the camera? Yes, please.
Also second.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Thank you. Ready now? Okay. The minutes, I would like to call the September 27th council meeting
Second.
to order. First item is the approval of the agenda. All in favor?
Move approval.
Carried.
With addition of item 610.
Conversation going on in the back?
It's a repeat of you.
Yeah, we can hear all in favor. Thank you. Ready now? Are we okay? The minutes, I would like to call the September 27th council meeting
Second.
to order. First item is the approval of the agenda. All in favor?
Move approval.
Carried.
With addition of item 610.
Conversation going on in the back?
It's a repeat.
We can hear all in favor. Just a moment, everybody. We are getting some voices in the background. The minutes, I would like to call the September 27th council meeting
Second.
to order. Just like to welcome everybody here this evening. This is our first time in the council chambers, so please bear with us.
Item
Conversation going on in the back?
It's a repeat.
We can hear all in favor. Just a moment, everybody. We are getting some voices in the background.
Whoa.
Minutes,
That just a delay?
Yeah, crazy.
test, test, test. Are we okay? Good. Okay. We have no delegations, no unfinished business, and no correspondence. We get right into reports. That council received the wastewater upgrade project progress report for information.
Move receipt. Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Welcome, Paul. It's nice to have you back.
Thank you, Your Worship. It is great to be back, and I didn't realise that I was fortunate to be for the first in-person meeting since I don't know when, but it is great to be back in Chambers and back in Cumberland. We have been, it may not have looked like it from what you see or don't see down at the lagoons, but we have actually been busy working away on the project over summer, so I'm pleased to present the report here to update Council on progress. The last time I was here in March, we awarded the contracts for the project manager, design engineer, and the construction manager, and those have been negotiated and executed and all of that, which is great. And at that time, I'm just going to read verbatim because this is the important part here. At that time in March, staff proposed to bring forward a follow-up report that would include 1, an updated project timeline, 2, more detailed budget analysis with the negotiated contract amounts, 3, a request for authorization of the remaining budget, because we only authorized for the contracts, and 4, details of the proposed public engagement activities. So tonight we get points 1 and 4. The budget analysis will have to wait until the next time I'm here in about a month, because things with the actual, not so much the budget, but what it's costing us to build it, are changing. So we want to try and get it to a coherent point where we are all agreed on our conceptual design before we come back to council. So we've gone through several iterations of what it's going to look like and where things are, and our costs have gone up, and then we make some changes and possible costs come down. So the budget part will wait for a future council meeting, but I will run through quickly just a bit on the iterations of the design and where we're at and what will be taken to the public over the next couple of days. So, Rachel has got the thing up there, and let's just see if this works. Oh, excellent. Okay. So that is the bird's eye view of what is there today. This photo is, Google Earth photo is actually from, I think it's, anyway, over the last winter. So it's actually very recent. The works that are going to happen over the course of the project, the first thing, this walking trail that's there will get moved. Right now that trail comes out onto the access road right next to the Headworks compound, and that'll become part of the construction site. So one of the first tasks is to relocate that walking trail. Then we fence the site. So we're still deciding whether it'll be construction fencing at first and permanent later, or do the permanent fence right from the start. But in any case, the construction site has to be fenced, and ultimately the lagoons entirely will get fenced. And I know that lots of people enjoy doing recreation activities around those lagoons, either on foot or bike or motorized or baby stroller or you name it. But we'll have to fence them. So this is sort of the rough order that things will proceed. A new player in the game, Diversion of the Creek Channel. A very preliminary assessment of this lagoon berm stability from the geotechnical engineer raised a question about the seismic stability of the lagoon berms along the creek. Because we have them right next to the creek. The slope is meant to be a 3-to-1 slope, and what we've actually got there is 1.8-to-1. And they've been there for 50 years and they're fine, but the risk is a seismic event during winter when the creek is high, and if we lost the lagoons, it would be quite, with everything else going on in an earthquake, to have that happening too would be quite disastrous. So it is possible to do a full seismic analysis of the berms and strength stabilization work on the berm and so on and so on. But a simpler thing would be to actually fill in the creek channel and move the channel to a new location. So that's actually the direction that we are pursuing. So it's quite a, I won't say a radical change, but anyway, this is something we hadn't contemplated at the start when we were designing how to treat wastewater, was the dam safety aspect of the lagoons themselves. And so that's what has led to this. If we fill in the existing creek channel, what you're then left with is a berm that is just 1.5 meters above the surrounding land surface. And where I've drawn that green line for the new creek is actually the low point of the marsh, and it's probably where the water ran before Maple Lake Creek was ever dug back in the 30s. So the new creek channel, that becomes part of the wetland habitat enhancement. The treatment works, what I call the wet components, the clarifier and possible future filtration and the disinfection. Our latest iteration has them in this corner. Previously they had been on the west side of the lagoons, and then they were in the southwest corner, and our last iteration has them here. Service buildings over by the headworks, that would be the operator's building, chemical storage, electrical room, sludge dewatering, anything that vehicles need to deliver stuff to or take away from. The idea is to keep it where the road is. So that is a rough layout of things. Within the lagoons, we're currently actually looking at parallel flow within both, as opposed to flow from one to the other, and then extract the water on the right-hand side through the existing weir boxes down to the new treatment works. And then once the water is treated and disinfected and all, it can go off to the reed bed and the wetlands. So the locations of these things have moved with our different iterations, and I'll even say that this is not the final. It may not, it could change again. We're having the whole project team out here for a 2-day site meeting next week, and we will hash it out and agree on the final layout. So it's theoretically possible that something rather could change from this. And this is iteration number 4. So that's where it's at. The other thing that's happened, the reed bed, I think I had showed this in March, that we originally had this, and then we had this. Right, so it moved. And then as a result of our field trial, the reed bed can get smaller. And so in June of this year, the reed bed moved, or May, it moved to there. okay, because it doesn't have to be it's so big. That's one of the good results from our field test. It's like, well, if it's that small, it could fit in the southeast corner. And then the last iteration, well, that's where the treatment works are going to go because of hydraulic reasons. The reed bed is now back up there. So iterations, right? That's number 4. It could actually move to anywhere within that green box, but the point being it's not in the southwest corner anymore. So things change. We've gone through these various iterations. This is pretty much where it ended up. And then just a close up here of what we're looking at for this creek realignment. Anywhere on this photo where you see the the yellow part is dead reed canary grass, because this photo was taken in winter. And the reed canary grass loves the low-lying wet areas. So where I've drawn the green line here matches up with what I've observed in the field, but that's the low point. And then we would fill in that existing channel and it becomes inside the fence. And that red line is roughly the property line of the lagoons. So that's the Coles Notes version of how the design has progressed. There's obviously been a lot more details in the background to get to where we are for all sorts of engineering reasons. And we have the process engineer Troy Vassos out here tomorrow and doing a look around to work out details of this. So hopefully this is our final version. And we've got to then cost out what it's going to be to move this channel. The alternative of a thorough geotechnical investigation, drilling into the berms and all this sort of thing, and yeah, we said maybe we should just solve the problem, potential problem, and be done with it. So to prove there isn't a problem is a lot of work, and we think this is actually easier and better. But we will go through the machinations of that. In my report, I actually did that in reverse order. Site perimeter and trail relocation, already had that up there on the diagram. And then well, that's everything that's going to happen down there. Communications and public engagement. So we had planned to have public engagement here in the fall once we had finalised our conceptual design. So these iterations of conceptual design, it was still changing and over the last couple of weeks. We wanted to bring it back to council first so that you could see this, and here it is. You get 24 hours advance of the public. I'd wanted it to be a bit longer, but that's the way it played out. Tomorrow evening we have a Lagoon Tour for the public, 5 to 6 p.m. down there. And then on Wednesday afternoon, Lagoon Tour, 2:30 to 3:30, and then the open house back here at 6 to 8 in the evening. So 2 tours so that if people can't get there in the afternoon, they can get there in the evening, and let's hope the weather cooperates. But I know that Cumberland people are a hardy bunch, and the first time we had the Lagoon Tour, it was raining, and I got to see a great display of gumboot fashion by memory that day, and it might well be the same again tomorrow. The open house, well actually the Lagoon Tours, so the idea is to walk people around the lagoon and literally a very brief of discussion of what is there, because everybody knows what's there, and then to take them through the process of what we propose to do. And this will effectively be the last time the public gets an official look at it. Once we start the site activities and the construction fence goes up, they won't be able to walk around the lagoons anymore. So we have to make the site secure once we start work. The construction work, actually I'll hold that thought for a moment. Let's just stay with the open house, then I'll get to the construction schedule, because that's the last part of my report. So do the tours about an hour or so, and then on the Wednesday night for the open house, pretty much the same format that we used back in the day doing the LWMP. Open house starts at 6 o'clock. We'll have poster boards here and viewing and just discussion of that for the first half hour. Then Troy and I have got a presentation that we'll do from 6:30 to 7:15, and then the last 3/4 of an hour will be questions and discussion and so on. And I hope it's a good turnout. after the open house is done, that's it for the main information about the lagoon part of the project. We have a separate process that we will be doing. We haven't mapped it out yet in terms of dates about public input for what the wetland enhancement will be. So, but in terms of what happens with the wastewater treatment at the lagoons, there isn't really any more input from the public. This is to actually say, yeah, here's how it's played out. And I know some people who live in the area have been anxious to know what's going on, so we'll be able to give them as much detail as we can. And then when I come back to council in a month or so with the budget details and so on, we'll have a plan then of the engagement process for the wetlands. So that one we're actually seeking input as to what will happen for habitat enhancement and recreation, all that sort of thing. Project schedule change. So I hate to say it, but here it is. The project has already been subject to some delay in the procurement and design process for various reasons, some related to COVID, some not. Some related to just the number of iterations we've done, and some related to just doing things over summer when it's actually very difficult to coordinate everyone. But anyway, that's what it is, and then the channel realignment has sort of thrown another curveball at us. We deal with it, but it forced some changes and allowed some others. So we think we're in a better place. And while it would be possible to start work basically in January, digging holes in the middle of winter here in Cumberland is generally not a good idea, and what the project team is recommending is that we hold off until the spring. There will be some major one of the first things will be excavation, and we don't want to dig a hole and have it fill in with water, which would end up delaying us until the spring anyway. So while there will be some site prep and clearing and fencing that will happen between now and then, the actual official shovels in the ground, not until spring. And we'll do an official groundbreaking ceremony at that time where we'll have some kind of shovel or a pick. I think those things appear in Cumberland's logo somewhere. I've never seen the gold-plated pick that you use for the groundbreaking, but I'm looking forward to that. So we'll have some official thing like that in the spring when we're actually ready to break ground. I think fencing and clearing trees isn't nearly as exciting, and in my opinion doesn't constitute groundbreaking. So then our schedule, you can see the map there in the report. Still design work for the remainder of this year. The detailed design carries on early next year. This is where the nuts and bolts and pipes and whatever go, and then the actual construction will start in the second quarter. So we think 3 quarters for the major construction. The detailed construction, which includes connecting pipes and stuff within a building or whatever, will carry on possibly into the winter. And then the commissioning, I actually have currently a 9-month period for commissioning. We'll just have to see how we go, but effectively we've had to push back the completion by a year. It would be a miracle to put shovels in the ground in March or April and have everything up and running for September, which was our original goal. So part of that is that we then have to get an extension of the funding with Green Municipal Fund. That was always what was driving the September 2022 timeline. And they've said that they can give us an extra year, and not surprisingly, lots of other municipalities across the country have run into delays on infrastructure projects currently. So the federal provincial funding, the $7 million one, the big one, is good till March of 2024, and it's not an issue. And there'd be something majorly wrong if we challenged that timeline. So that is our revised schedule. I regret that it won't be finished within the term of this council, which was sort of a goal I'd hoped to achieve, but it will certainly be started and well underway. And I think then that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have. And thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Paul. Councillor Sullivan, would you like to start?
Thanks very much, Paul. I don't have any questions. I'm just really happy to see this moving forward. I'm looking forward to the open house as well. and it looks like you've found some solutions to these issues, and the iterations are always interesting to see. And after sitting on the advisory committee for so many years, really happy to see this moving forward. And it's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
Councillor Spruill,
Thank you for the report. It does look like it's
could you move closer to the mic, please? Or pull it towards you?
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know that good things take time, so I can understand how with just one little delay in one area is going to bring delays in other areas. I really like the new stream channel. I mean, this was the company farm, the Dunsmuir company farm, and it would have had a little creek running through a meadow and horses and stuff. So it gives me some of that feeling. I'm sure the creek channel was like that, not a straight line. It's good that you've thought about giving access points for people to be able to see through to the lagoons for bird watching, and that the trail is going to be rerouted to get us to make it so that we can connect through to the Cumberland Road. So yeah, I'm really excited to see this move ahead.
Thank you. I will make a comment there about, I didn't know that was the Dunsmuir farm. One of the things I'd been intending to do, but every time I've been here over the summer, the museum had been closed, was to go and look for old photos. I have one from the 1930s of this area, but to see, it'd be interesting to see some before Maple Lake Creek was dug, to see what the old creek form was. And it would be an interesting restoration if we end up back where it used to be. So I intend to go, and I might need some help from staff for digging through old stuff, but we'll have a look for that.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Thanks, Paul, for the report. It's great to see this moving forward. I have a couple of questions. The trail, maybe we can go back to the one before? Yeah. So the existing trail ended where the dotted line starts?
Not quite. I didn't actually show the existing trail carries on. That last piece of yellow straight line basically joins to the orange circle. It actually comes out to the road, and you walk out along the road. That is the existing trail.
Right. Okay.
It just made it a little bit simpler to show it like that. But
Okay. So that original piece of the trail will be intact.
yeah,
it's just
everything
rerouted
that's
at
a solid
this
line remains as is.
Awesome.
It's just where it came into the works area. And I think it'll be a more pleasant experience as a trail.
Okay. And then my other question, given the affinity this community has for trees, what sort of tree removal are we looking at?
I knew someone would ask that question. Okay, where the fence goes, as few as possible in order to do the fencing. Which button there, Rach? I'll survive. Okay. For the fencing that is there on the top and the left side, the north and the west side, there are some trees that are right next to the edge of the berm that are basically in danger of falling into the lagoons that will have to be taken out, some unstable cottonwoods and alders. So that one is really just to clear where the actual fence has to go. The major area of interest is on the south side, so immediately above where it says service buildings area. So as it stands, we don't think we need to build anything in that area of trees. However, those cottonwoods and alders, some of them quite tall and leaning over and are basically at a risk of wind throw. Until now, when the only thing has been the headworks compound, there's nothing much for them to fall on. Once we build all these things in there, it's a different issue. So we had a habitat assessment done of that area, and there is, not surprisingly, some good habitat in there. We think that perhaps what we'll have to do is take down the tall trees and then replant with trees that don't grow so tall. So if we don't need the area for actual buildings, it can remain as a habitat area, but the alders and cottonwoods are sort of unstable, so those ones might have to come down. We'll have to, that part, once we finalise the works plan, we will see, but it becomes a thing we have to make sure that nothing's going to fall over in a storm onto the works. So worst case scenario would be we'd have to clear all those trees and then replant with low-growing shrubs and trees, is how we view that particular spot.
Right, so I would then want to use this opportunity to suggest that maybe we could top trees instead of removing them completely, so that they're not going to crush a building, but there might just be branches that fall. And also an observation that cottonwood trees soak up an enormous amount of water, so that whatever we, I'm sure you know this, but for the public's interest, I guess, that we would want to replace them with equally water loving trees, because I think they're doing a good job at preventing flooding down there.
The one caveat to that, where the orange circle is, the stormwater used to flow under the road on this picture from the left to the right, so from west to east and down into that area. So it was quite wet. As part of these works, we have to divert that stormwater and keep it on the west side, and it will go out and around the top of the lagoons. So the area between the lagoon and the laundry building is going to become drier than what it was. It has to be, because it can't be a bog while we're doing our work.
Right.
So it's an interesting one. We'll work here with the Parks Department and whoever is the arborist or the tree specialist, because the nature of the area might change where other trees are better
That work
suited.
better.
It won't be as wet.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but we do, if we can, what we don't want to do if we don't have to is level everything and just have it as gravel, right? If there's a big area there that ends up, we don't need it for anything, and we can actually landscape it back to something nice and habitat and functional, it just can't be a storm hazard, that's all.
Right.
So-
And then I really like the relocation of the stream, and maybe when we're looking at doing that, we look at not trying to include it in the scope of this project, but extending that both ways, all the way, so that we're recreating that wetland all the way along, especially if we have an aerial photograph of how it was before. That would be a pretty neat restoration project for the future, maybe.
I think my take on that is, while we do this process, that's a good time to consider it. And if we end up with a plan that shows a future meandering stream from top to bottom of the whole area, and this section to be built now, then it's good to have an overall plan. So if that's an objective, then certainly we can look at that with the wetland specialists and the landscape architects and so on.
Awesome.
So it'd be
Thank
more
you.
exciting than a straight channel.
Right.
Councillor Kettler?
Thanks. Nice to see you again, Paul. I was wondering about the trails. I think you mentioned that there would be further discussion about recreation on the site. So is there a possibility that we might see more trails, possibly something connecting to the Union Road area?
I certainly hope so. So part of the public engagement over the winter with when I say the wetland enhancement, that includes trails. So I think what I can say definitively now, what you see on the yellow line has to happen because it's related to the works. Within the perimeter fence, that area is no longer a trail. And then on the north side, where the box saying perimeter fence is, and over in the wetland area, what trails we do and where is, I won't say it's totally up to the community because there's some physical limitations on what we can do, but certainly the intention was to have a good network of access trails throughout that area, and wherever we're going to put a pipe to carry water, on top of that becomes a trail. Or if we're going to build a swale, the bank of that would become a trail. So it's an integral part of that planning process that we're yet to do. And I've got the old map of the trails that were planned along the berms of the original lagoons. It's going to be quite a network, and I would like to recreate a good network. And while I don't think walking around a lagoon is exciting, clearly a lot of people do like it, and I want to replace at least as much trail as what they're going to lose, and but maybe make it a little bit more interesting than just around a square lagoon. So lots
Great.
of trails to come.
Yeah, thanks for that. I won't bug you. I kind of have some engineering questions about how that blue line is going to be crossing that green line, but I'll wait until the open house to ask you more about that. I was happy to see that we've lowered our pumping costs because, as you talked about earlier, you were able to do gravity feed for the site, and I hope that through all those iterations, you did find the lowest maintenance costs for pumping for us.
It's a consideration. There are sometimes, one of our iterations, the cost of doing it gravity in one particular fashion actually was very expensive. It's like, okay, we've gotten gravity and we can treat almost all the wet weather flow here, but the actual cost of doing that is prohibitive. So there was one iteration that went out. So yes, we'll bring forward our details on that once we've finalised them. I will say, just in regard to those arrows, that's purely an arrow on a map. The blue line in particular is not necessarily where I've drawn it there.
Right.
So
Yeah. I see
although
that.
the green line probably is, like that's the intention that it is close to that. So well spotted.
Great. And then the only other thing that I have concern about is the budget, but of course we'll see that hopefully at our next meeting.
Yep.
All right.
I share your concern.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Sproul, you had a second.
Yes, I forgot to mention about the pine forest on the north side. I don't really see it, but it's very, very significant. I know quite a lot about it.
So the pine forest that is on that photo would be on the top left-hand side, right? Basically, we are not planning to touch it other than if there are trails to go through it. And even then it might be that perhaps that has to wait for a later project. So, but in terms of our wetland enhancement, that is not part of the area. It never was part of the original lagoon concept from back in 2005. That area was specifically left out, and we continue to specifically leave it out.
Mac Fraser and I went into that whole area, and I brought people from the conservation data department in Victoria. There's a lot of really rare plants you wouldn't normally find that only grow in acidic soil. Blueberries are in there. It's very difficult to get in there. We had the opportunity, machine had been through. But at the time, I thought that earlier plan included putting boardwalks through that forest, but it might not have been written down officially.
No.
But that's what we were talking about.
So I think the key distinction there is recreational access by whatever fashion can be, but in terms of a habitat enhancement, it doesn't need to be enhanced. It's pretty damn good already. And so we stay out of that, and there had always been concern if we were doing use of reclaimed water and that we had nutrients in that water that would be turning what is naturally nutrient deficient area into a nutrient positive area, and it would change things again. So it's been a key consideration to keep that out, and that was one of the results of the habitat assessment we had done. That area is very good and is in no need of enhancement.
Protection.
Okay. One question I had is the platforms. You mentioned them in your report. Is there a number or a location at this point?
That'll be part of our public process. I've got no idea where the best platforms will be or what people want to look at. So if you leave that to the project engineers, you'll have platforms that are easy to build and will withstand a hurricane, but you might not see anything from them. And I know from my previous explorations in the area up to the north where the old test cells are, there's the remains of a viewing platform there from 2005. It's grown in now and you can't see anything, but we will leave that to the input process, and I guess perhaps with some assistance from parks and so on as to what and where they want to see.
Okay.
That'll be the easiest part of it, I think.
Well, Thank you very much, Paul. This open house and the tours, is there any limit on the number of people for the tours?
Good question, no. Well, actually, I suppose if 100 people turn up, that would be a little bit challenging. If it's, in reality, doing a guided tour for a group of up to 30 people is probably actually the limit. I don't know if we're likely to challenge that, but when I've done them in the past in other places, about 30 is a bigger group as you can handle. For the open house, we'll set it up as we have in the past with the theatre seating here facing the screen, and I guess we have it spaced, and we will put out as many chairs as we can possibly fit in. And
So it might be better to come to the tour than to actually come if there's concerns.
yes,
Because,
and the tour is outside too, and you don't have
Yes.
to wear a mask.
yes,
That's true.
yes. Well, thank you very much, Paul, for your presentation. It was really good to hear from you, and look forward to your next presentation.
Thank you. Thank you
Might-
very much, and it's great
Might
to
be
be
a
back.
little different than this one.
It will be far more detailed.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Next, we have that council received development variance permit 2719 Maryport Avenue.
Move receipt. Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Alright, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just wanna make sure, is this on automatically? Do I have to- I have to push the button. Okay, there we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the first report of the evening is the variance application for 2719 Maryport Avenue. Application is coming back from the Advisory Planning Commission. It was referred at a previous council meeting. And just to go over it again, the village has received an application for a variance permit to vary the front setback, side setback, and projection into a required setback of an existing principal dwelling to allow for the building to be raised by 2 feet. The variances would allow the applicant to make a full-height basement to accommodate a secondary suite. The dwelling was built in approximately 1901, so prior to the current setback regulations, and a setback variance is required for the dwelling to be lifted. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so you mentioned in the report that there was another house that was a twin home that has already been lifted.
Correct, yeah, they received a variance for the existing setting. I can't remember the year, but 4 or 5 years ago, maybe now?
Not that far back.
No, maybe
Yeah.
within 5 years for sure.
He just finished it, actually.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So, so now they will be twins again if this.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my only question. Thanks.
Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Melina. Yeah, as I understand, it'll be the same height as the neighboring dwelling, so I'm happy to see that happen.
Councillor Sullivan?
No questions?
Councillor Spool?
No comment.
So what is your pleasure?
I'll move that council approve the application 2021-12 DV for a development variance permit on the property described as Lot 10, Block 5, DL 21, Plan VIP 522, 2719 Maryport. Sorry.
Second.
Seconder, Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive development variance permit 2814 Dunsmuir Avenue.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, so this application for 2814 Dunsmuir Avenue is also coming back from the Advisory Planning Commission. So the subject property is currently under active subdivision with an existing small dwelling on proposed Lot A. The applicant is proposing to move a dwelling onto proposed Lot B and renovate the structure to increase the size of the building footprint. The applicant seeks to vary the rear setback to 3.51 meters and the front setback to a minimum of 2 meters. And just to go over again, the proposed structure is under the permitted 40% lot coverage for R1A zone.
Okay. Councillor Brown?
Thanks again for this one. So as I understand, the dwelling on Lot A, it's Lot A that, yes, will give more space between the existing housing, and there's parking on the alley there, so the variance is so that they can have a front porch, so it's a frontage variance. And then from the other lot, not the building, because that building could move, but from the lot line between the two residences, existing dwellings, where the existing dwelling is.
Right.
Right.
Oh, no, sorry, and then it's the front and then the new rear setback.
Right.
Right now, it's technically
Okay.
a side setback.
Yeah.
Until the subdivision is approved, and then it will become
then it's a
rear
rear.
setback, yes.
Okay. Okay. And do we know whether it's a one-story or a two-story building? Do they know what building they're moving on?
I don't know, I haven't seen it, no.
Okay.
They won't apply for the building permit until they get a variance,
Right.
otherwise that might not actually
Right.
happen, so.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Sproul?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions that mainly come out of a concern from a citizen, but they are asking what is going, which is Lot A, Lot B, what dwelling is going to be brought on, what is it, one level? At what point will we know more of this and the plans that they have for subdivision?
Well, right now, we just have the sort of, the site plan drawn by the designer that shows the proposed home and its location on the site. But we won't see like an actual house plan, like I guess because they're moving one on, so the existing house until they apply for a building permit, when all those drawings are required.
So there's an existing house on a regular lot once it's subdivided out, and then
Yep.
there'll be an empty lot. The new lot, Lot B, will be the one that will get another building.
I think it's proposed Lot A, which
Oh,
is the new
okay.
one, yeah.
Okay.
But yes, it will get a new dwelling. And as far as I know, it's all within the R1A guidelines, except for the variances, which is what they're, or for the front setback and the rear setback, which is why they're applying for the variance.
Okay.
But they'd still have to follow the height guidelines and lot coverage and
Right.
all the regular things, yeah.
And I guess one of the concerns was the parking. There is no actual parking, it says here, but this is just what somebody in the area says.
Yeah, no, they have 2 tandem parking spots proposed in between the alley and the side of the home.
Okay. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really happy to see the diversion of construction waste mentioned in this report. I'm a huge fan of house moving. It's really actually some of the first reuse and recycling that really started to happen, I think, in our society. And this moving a house is actually a lot considerably less disturbance in the neighborhood than regular construction. So, yeah, I'm happy to see this moving forward. Also, a couple weeks ago in the Waste Management Board, they mentioned the province will be coming down with, they want a 35% reduction in the landfill. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to need to see more of, stuff like that. So I'm happy to see this. Thanks.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I'm also happy to see that we aren't creating more construction waste and that we're moving this house from somewhere else. I was just, because they're saying that they're moving a house and they need the variance because they have to fit this already existing house onto this lot and want the porch. I was hoping that we would have more information about the house itself because it relates directly to the variance. So, you know, I support what they're doing and again, the diversion of waste, but it would be nice and maybe next time if we did have that information available to us. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? And somebody would like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move the council approve the application 2021-08 DV for a development variance permit on the property described as Lot 1, Block 27, DL 21, Plan VIP 522C at 2814 Dunsmuir Avenue.
All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Browner, are you in favor or opposed? I'm sorry.
favor?
In favor,
Yeah.
okay, thank you very much.
We didn't second. That was
Oh.
what my concerned look was.
Okay,
So I'll
I read-
second
I read
it,
I can't-
and we've already voted, so.
yes. Thank you. Next, that council received the report development variance permit 3388 Bolton Street.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, so 3388 Bolton is the first of 4 variance requests that we'll be seeing this evening along Bolton Street. As previously presented, the rear retaining walls continue along the rear property line of 3 adjacent properties, so 3392, 3396, and 3400 Bolton Street. The Advisory Planning Commission has just reviewed these applications and has recommended approval. Additionally, through discussions with the property owners and information about the phased development of Coal Valley Estates, staff recognize the understandable justification for the retaining walls. Should the variances be approved, the next steps would be applying for a building permit, which would include a review of the geotechnical report, which would cover drainage, which has been a concern, and confirmation of field reviews, which are the engineer actually going out onto the site and confirming that the wall and the substrates and drainage considerations were all actually implemented, not just the recommended plan. Yeah, so for 3388, the applicant is seeking to vary the maximum height of retaining wall at the rear property line from 1.2 meters to 1.5 meters, and as well on the side property line from 1.2 meters to 1.9 meters. I can provide more details if required, but please ask questions.
Councillor Sproul?
Yeah, I'm very concerned at the mention of soils and waters running off downhill, even with the big blocks there. If it's not done right, anyway, what is going to be a solution or prevention of water running down and flooding out other people's yards?
Yeah, so the geotechnical report provided by the engineer does cover drainage and what the builder can do to prevent stormwater issues. And then if the variance is approved, then the building permit requires the field reviews. So making sure the engineer has to sign off that he's been on site and that everything's been built to spec. So hopefully that we would trust the professional on that.
And just further, I guess the insurance company demands to see the engineer's signing off on that. So the village is not liable. I always think, what if something should happen, an earthquake? Are we covered, or is it the engineer that's covered for any damage to the slopes?
I am actually not sure. It would probably likely be the property owner's insurance to that effect, but I can't speak to that because I don't know the details of it.
Clayton, I see you pushing your button.
Yeah, trying to figure things out. Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so that through the engineer reports as well as the geotech, that would be where the village would want assurances that those aspects are satisfied. And so we, from our end, no different than any other development that occurs, you know, we look to those professional engineers and technical experts to be able to provide that information so that we can then feel satisfied that those have been constructed accordingly to the requirements that would be set forward. So right now, at this point in time, like as mentioned, those are the aspects that we will be requiring to move forward with the final permit, that these have been constructed correctly. So definitely more information to come on that, but if the variance is approved, staff would work with the owners to assure that information is provided to us, and that we have that assurance that it's been constructed properly.
May I ask
Yes.
one more? It's not quite related, but sorry, I forgot. Oh, about how the layout was done. Like, how was? You see, I don't actually understand how the developer divided up all the land to have different grades and leveling and stuff. Has the developer had any part to play in this situation where there are, sorry, I'm supposed to be looking here, situation where there is differences in height of the land and where the house is on the contours? How did it all happen? I guess that some of the services were put in too shallow. There's a lot of concerns, and I'm not sure whose responsibility that falls into.
Maybe I'll ask if it's okay, Your Worship, just to have the manager of planning might be able to assist with that answer.
Thank you. So at this point when the subdivision is complete, which it is, so there wasn't any involvement in these wall construction or the variance application from the developer who has now sold the lots. What we're looking at phase 9 is almost entirely built out. There's homes on almost all of the lots now. So we can certainly consider what we're experiencing now in the future phase of Coal Valley when it comes to reviewing and approving that subdivision. And the other thing, which I've mentioned before, is the changes we've made to our building permit application, where we are requiring grading plans when the building permit is submitted in Coal Valley Estate for a new house. So that way, the builder has to identify where changes in grade are significant so that they're planning a retaining wall. They identify that when they make the building permit application for the house, and that's the opportunity so where the village, where staff know without a doubt what they're planning, and we can say, well, you need a variance for the height of that wall at that time. And then that's when the builder would have the opportunity to think about it. Do they want to apply for that variance, or do they want to look at making a new plan for developing that lot, which might include changing the house plan, a different kind of landscaping. Does that answer your question?
Okay, Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thanks for that, Courtney. Yeah, just having chats with Milena about the situation today. Yeah, I just want to make sure that moving forward that this is avoidable. I realize this is probably part and parcel due to our extreme growth and speed of growth, and there's kind of some of the developers that they're less than what we're going to use. I'm going to back off of that. I'm just happy moving forward that hopefully we can avoid these kind of situations with these future developments and with the grading and the terracing and all that stuff, so that people aren't just building what they want, and then people's, I don't even have my thing on. Then people purchasing these homes aren't left holding the bag when the developers and the builders are like, we don't know, and the village said this, and so yeah, I just happy that we're dealing with this now, even though the upcoming reports are going to be a little trickier. I'm really appreciative of the work that you guys are doing in planning, because it's been a while, then a lot of this stuff has been falling through the cracks, so I'm happy to see this sort of getting sewn up. So, thanks.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I think last time we discussed this when we referred it to APC, I was saying that there really isn't a good solution out of it. I think everybody is playing a part. We all have some responsibility, I believe, the homeowners, the developer, the village. I do have concerns about drainage, and not just with this block, but with the whole development itself. have concerns because of, well, because it's basically on hard pan rock, and so how do we control water when we can't have infiltration galleries or other things like that that we would normally use in those situations to control water. So going back to this particular application, I'm looking at the engineered report, and we're saying that, okay, we are going to rely on the engineers. However, they're saying, in this case, drainage pipe is of no use as there is no storm drain available to disperse collected groundwater. So in other areas we do have storm drain, and there is perforated pipe later in the application. In other applications, there's perforated pipe at the bottom of these retaining walls that moves the water away from the area. So why don't we have a storm drain for Bolton? And is that something that the developer was responsible for? When are those plans put into place? And is this something that the new grading plans are going to address? Or is that something much earlier in the process?
I know I don't believe that, I mean, again, I haven't been at the village for the earlier phases of Coal Valley, but and maybe Courtney can speak to this more, but I don't believe that there's generally a rear storm system. I believe it's off the front of the property in this case. And so I think like with drainage pipe, if it came out at the bottom of the wall, it would be draining into the neighbor's property on Soulport potentially. I'm not sure if that was taken into consideration by the geotech or builder at the time. I mean, we're learning lots through this process, so that's something to definitely consider if we're looking at a grading plan for the next phase of Coal Valley, and we have a greater understanding of, you know, where potential retaining walls could be. That's something that we could maybe just keep in mind for servicing, or yeah, I don't know if Courtney has anything to add to that, but.
Yeah, just to add to that, the drainage, yeah, so the storm drains is addressed at the subdivision design stage, so that wouldn't be addressed later on at future building permit stage, that new process I was talking about. But I would say that drainage, you know, there's the same amount of water entering the land above the walls, whether or not there's a wall there. And drainage management, when building a retaining wall, has a lot to do with preserving the stability of the wall. And as well, it can improve the impacts of drainage on the lower lot by managing where it goes and retaining the soil. So the concern when it comes to building permit stage and drainage is primarily about, well, it's about stability of the wall and not increasing any impact of drainage on a neighboring property. Yeah, and that, I mean, that does make sense to me. You have more soil absorbs water. If you can maintain that integrity of the wall, then everything is fine on that side. But probably still moving in the slope direction, so across the properties that we're talking about on Bolton, because the last property there that we have in the application, the 339, their engineering report talks about a small retention pond that's on their site, and that that the engineering report for them says that natural dispersion would likely not be enough, and that a curtain drain at a sump pump would be required there. So we're sort of anticipating that there would be some drainage toward that lower lot. It's kind of a wider lot as well. And that there would need to be some kind of removal of water at that point. It's a little tough because, you know, everybody wants to have the flat lot, and it starts with that first one. They build the wall to a certain level, then their neighbors feel that they have to, and then those neighbors, and then so it's a chain reaction of breaking bylaws is basically what what happened. So, you know, that's a little bit troubling for me to wrap my head around. To say, yeah, that's okay, but I do understand the engineering problem that we're facing there and building on those slopes. Yeah, I'm just not sure about if we make them conform to current bylaws, then we're reducing that height significantly and maybe causing us some engineering problems ultimately.
Worship, may I just make one more comment here? Just where these walls are between Bolton and Soulport, if the walls had been built on the Soulport lots, no variance would have been required because they're the lower lot and the zoning bylaw doesn't have a maximum height for building a retaining wall on the lower lot, but the building permit is still required. So that's a key factor in the recommendation here in our opinion.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Thanks so much for your work on this as well. This obviously hasn't been easy. And I share the rest of council's concerns about moving forward. So I appreciate the geocheck review that will happen before next steps, and also changing the process and getting grading and service levels for the entire subdivision, and then holding people to that. I think Councillor Kettler named it well, that you create a situation where one neighbor wants a flat yard or a better view, and so raises the property, and then it sends this chain reaction. And in this case, with the way the properties back onto other properties, there's really not much we can do unless we ask people to remove their houses, particularly 3388, I think this one is. There's no room to negotiate anything on that property without moving the house. So that's another issue. Yeah, and I was also concerned about the engineering reports, and that all of them sort of absolve the engineer of any responsibility really at all, because they don't know whether the process that they've laid out was actually followed. And so I can imagine, as a neighbor, watching dump load after dump load worth of fill coming in behind your house is probably quite terrifying. And then watching a house being put on top of it that's going to loom over yours for eternity is also unsettling. So I appreciate the stress that this is also put on the neighborhood, and hopefully we've found a way to not do this in the future. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, members of council, for your concerns and your comments. I too have visited the site more times than I've ever visited any other site that we have been dealing with, and the concerns from the residents and from members of council. Thank you all for voicing them. And I would like to thank staff also for all the time and energy that they've put into this, and trying to get things to work on behalf of the village. It's greatly appreciated. Yes?
I just wanted to add one more thing that was sort of raised earlier about the stormwater management plan. So phase 9, we realized from previous phases that we couldn't do, that the developer, because they had blasted the rock and then used the rock as infill to put the homes on, that having retention infill what are they called? The drainage, the rock pits on the properties was not appropriate because the water just went everywhere because it had all been blasted. So taking that information into the next phases as well and not allowing for that to happen again.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that we really appreciate all the time and energy that you've put into it, and I'm certainly not happy that this has happened. And I'm glad to see that you have a plan to move forward, so thank you all very much. So can we have a motion?
I'll move that council approve the application for the property legally described as Lot 1, DL 24, Plan EPP 95109, 3388 Bolton Street.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, 6.5, that council received the report Development Variance Permit 3392 Bolton Street.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, so this is the property adjacent to 3388 Bolton Street. The applicant is requesting to vary the retaining wall at the rear property line from 1.2 meters to 1.5 meters.
And we are going to start with Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, I don't have anything new to add. Just sort of to touch on what Councillor Kettler was talking about in the last report, but that's the next one, I think, coming out. No comments on this, thanks.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, similar issue. One thing I didn't ask that I wanted to for the last one that also applies here is how the inspections are done. When we have a building inspector go to the site, because it was mentioned in some of the letters that we received that there was an assumed approval by the village because the building inspector had been on site. And I just wanted to clarify that the building inspector is looking at the building and not necessarily at the yard and the retaining wall.
Correct.
And that an engineer would need to obviously go to
Yeah.
certify that on our behalf, which we don't do, I don't think, right?
No, so that's where the field reviews, it's called a Schedule CB, and the field reviews done by an engineer. So that's requested by the building inspector, and they can't receive final on the project until that has been submitted by the project's engineer.
Yeah, it's just, I think the developer probably is aware of our bylaws, and so that's makes it a little bit troubling to see it happen repeatedly again and again with the same person, and just have really flagrant, abuse of our
Disregard.
disregard, thank you, of our bylaws. And then to say, well, the village had been on site, and, that's, I just wanted to clarify that, that building inspectors look at the buildings and that these walls, need to be designed and certified by engineers and not by the building inspector.
Correct.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
I'm not sure I have anything to add to this one.
Okay, Councillor Schmidt-Rule?
Yeah, just in this letter from somebody who lives up there or was living up there, the depth of the services, it keeps being mentioned, the services that were put in were at the wrong place. Again, how did that happen, and how can that be fixed? If that, does it make any difference to drainage? I guess the services is water, sewage. Is that the
Stormwater.
Stormwater. So is that a problem, and is it able to be remediated?
At this point, the level of the services on Bolton Street couldn't be remediated. All the houses on the lot, or sorry, on the street are all hooked up already, and the street was finished, I guess, at subdivision phase. Once again, I apologize, but this was before my time, so we've been trying to sort of look back historically through the planning files. But I can't confirm if they were put at the wrong height or if it was just, I don't know, maybe Courtney has more.
Yeah, so I haven't been able to confirm with the manager of operations. There was no mistake made in installing the services, is our understanding, no error. I think what they're referring to is that, you know, if the services have been installed, sort of here's the street and down the slope a little bit more, so it had been designed differently from the start, they may have been able to begin their house at a lower level. Like their driveway would have gone downhill towards the house. So that's a question of how the subdivision is designed in the first place, and not an error, and sort of a hindsight kind of comment that could have provided different options had it been done differently.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Someone like to move? Yes, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing. The building permit process does allow us to ask for peer review of reports if staff is not satisfied with the quality, or we have questions. So I just wanted to let you know that too, that if staff had concerns at the building permit stage, that there are mechanisms for us to be able to look into it more.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Settle?
Sure. I'll move the council approve the application 2021-13 DV for the property legally described as Lot 3, DL24, Plan EPP 95109. Property legally described as Lot 3, DL24. Let's just read that again. EPP 95109, 3396 Bolton Street. Sorry.
Second.
9-2, isn't it?
3392.
9-2.
Must be this white piece of paper.
Seconder? Councillor Spruill, all in favour?
Oh, I was, yeah.
Opposed? No, carried. Next, that council receive the report development variance permit 3396 Bolton Street.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favour? Carried.
All right, so 3396 Bolton Street, adjacent to 3392 Bolton Street. So we've received an application to vary the maximum height of the retaining wall at the rear property line from 1.2 meters to between 1.5 meters and 3 meters, as well as a portion of the north property line from 1.2 meters to 1.5 meters. So that's the corner, just where at the top northeast corner. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, again, it's a similar issue, and maybe I'll just take a moment to say that, council's not obliged to okay people's yards being as flat and big as possible, and that there are other ways that the yard can be designed. And as we get farther into a development where there is more slope and cliffside, that I think it's council's expectation that people will need to be looking at terraced backyards, and not trying to maximize the backyard as much as these homes have, at the expense of the neighbors staring at these huge walls on the other side. Yeah, it just doesn't make for good neighborhoods, and hopefully we can do better next time.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I mean, this one in particular is literally the entire house looms over the top of the rear fence of the neighboring property. So, yeah, again, not an ideal situation. I appreciated the addition of the clarification of the services, because I think that had a huge impact on these developments. And yeah, there's just so many other ways this could have been done, and it's hard to undo. So
Councillors, oh, sorry, you finished?
go ahead. Yes, sorry.
Councillor Sproul?
I haven't really got anything more to add. There's similarities between all of them, and yeah, I'm sure there's lots to be learnt from this for
Okay.
future developments. So
Councillor Sullivan?
I guess I'll just reiterate that moving forward, this is not what we're interested in as a village, as a council, as neighbors. Moving forward, we will do better. I would hope. Thanks.
Would you like to make the motion?
I'll move that. Oh, sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
you get it right this time.
That council approved the application 2021-13 DV for the properly legally described as Lot 3 DL 24 Plan EPP 951093396 Bolton.
second.
This is also the one that has the pond on it, though. So are we going to make sure that they follow the engineer's advice with the curtain drain and sump pump?
Yes.
Okay. And we will be checking that with our own engineer. Great, thank you.
Now that was moved and seconded. All in favor? Carried. Next, that council received the report development variance permit 3400 Bolton Street.
Move to
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, so this is the last variance application on Bolton Street, not for the evening. So 3400 Bolton Street, obviously neighboring 3396. The village has received an application to vary the maximum height of their retaining wall at the rear property line from 1.2 to 1.5. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, to vary it to 1.5 meters from 1.2.
Okay, Councillor Brown?
I don't have any more to add on this one.
Coun-
the motion, maybe.
Councillor Sproul?
Nothing more to say.
Councillor Sullivan? Councillor Kettler?
Just one thing about the numbering system. Why, why aren't they in numerical order? Is that something that the village is responsible for,
What's going on
or
up there, right?
the developer?
The Wild West, indeed.
Aren't they in numerical order? Going up? 3388, 3392, 3396, 3400?
They're not. They're, if you look at the map, there's missing numbers for some reason.
I know we generally do four numbers
Address.
in between.
Okay.
Yeah.
To allow for like another suite to be added or something? Is that-
It's just
Just what
how
we
it's been done. I know in older parts of that it is not uniform throughout town, I will say. But any new addressing is generally four numbers in between each address,
Right.
which allows for potential, not obviously up in Clough Valley, but potential subdivision. Then you can add another number in between. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Someone like to
Did we
move?
move that one? Yep, that council approved the application 2021-07 DV for the properly legally described as Lot 4 DL 24 Plan EPP 95109 3400 Bolton Street.
Seconded. Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried. Next, that council received the report development variance permit 2415 Beaumont Crescent.
Move receipt.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Carried. Councillor Sproul,
Well, it's much the same.
Should we have the report first?
oh, sorry, yes, go ahead, Courtney.
Let's have the report first.
Thank you. So I'm going to sharing the load here with Melina because we have quite a few reports to introduce. So I'll speak to the next 4 reports in a summary before we go through each of them individually. So the next 4 are initial staff reports for development variance permit applications for existing retaining walls in Coal Valley Estates. 3 of the 4 subject properties are side by side with addresses on Beaumont Crescent and Kendall. These are 2410 Kendall, 2415 Beaumont, and 2411 Beaumont. The rear of these 3 lots back onto Lyndale Avenue, and there's a single retaining wall at the rear property lines adjacent to Lyndale with a height of between 2.3 meters rising up to 3.0 meters. The maximum permitted height in this situation, again, is 1.2 meters. From the front lot lines to the rear lot lines, the grade of these properties drops between 4 meters and 6.5 meters, and the purpose of the retaining wall, as noted by the applicant, is to retain soil and create a level yards for the 3 lots. For the retaining wall at the rear property line, the recommendation is to deny the variance. And just to note, there's not a recommendation here to refer to the Advisory Planning Commission, given the recommendation to deny, but council still has the option to do that, referral. So the rationale for this recommendation to deny the variance for the rear wall is described in the report, but in summary, there's an aesthetic impact from Lyndale Avenue. It's been reported by initial public complaints when the wall was first constructed. And as well, the highest portion of the wall at the address 2411 Beaumont is also adjacent to the next phase of Coal Valley that hasn't been subdivided yet. So approving the variance for this 3-meter high wall would make it challenging for the future lot adjacent to manage their grades without also requesting a variance for a wall of a similar height. So if the variance for this rear retaining wall on these 3 lots is denied, I just want to describe the options that the applicant has. A couple of options I'll describe. So one is they could reduce the wall to 1.2 meters or less, which is the height permitted in the zoning bylaw. And this would look like about 1.5 lock blocks. The blocks they can be purchased in half sizes too. Then the grading on the rest of the backyard could be addressed through a series of other retaining walls that could also be 1.2 meters or less, and perhaps that in a combination of sloping areas. They'd have to make a new landscape plan. In this scenario, no variances or building permits would be required. So that's one possibility the applicants could look into. Another one is they could look at reducing the height of the wall to something less than it is now, but greater than 1.2 meters. So reapply for a variance with a new plan for something different. By lowering the height of the wall, they could reduce the aesthetic and functional impacts. So that's the end of the intro on that retaining wall at the rear of Lyndale Avenue. But for the middle of those 3 properties, 2415 Beaumont, there is also a retaining wall at a side lot line from the front lot line to the house. And this wall is recommended for approval. If the same wall had been built on the adjacent lower property, there is no maximum height and a variance would not be required. And the functional and aesthetic impacts are not the same as the other wall just described. And then the last of these 4 properties of the next reports, 2485 Beaumont, it's not adjacent to these other 3. There is an existing retaining wall of between 1.5 and 2.3 meters on the side and the rear property lines. And the purpose of this wall, as described by the applicant, is to maximize level yard space for the house. And the recommendation here is to deny the variance. If this variance is denied, the applicant has the option to reduce the height of the wall to 1.2 meters or less, or again, submit a new variance application with redesign if they'd like to propose something different. So then the next on the agenda then is 2415 Beaumont Crescent. And this is the middle of the 3 properties that have a rear retaining wall on Lyndale Avenue. And this property is also applied to vary the height. So they've applied to vary the height of their rear retaining wall from 1.2 to 2.3 meters. And also to vary the height of a retaining wall to 1.5 meters for a wall on the side property line. The recommendation is that council deny the application for the 2.3 meter wall on the north property line, that's at Lindale, but approve the application for the 1.5 meter wall on the east property line.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Sproul, you're first.
Well,
Okay.
it sounds like a lot of stuff has to change for them to be able to continue. Are they finished with the project? They've finished building the house, but they have to take the retaining wall, some of it away.
It's correct, the house, this house is complete, and the retaining wall is complete. If the variance is denied, they would have to reduce the height of the retaining wall and come up with a different way to grade the backyard.
Okay.
Councillor Sullivan?
You mentioned in your report that it will be challenging for future development if we allow this to go forward. So that's a very heavy statement. I'm going to support the staff recommendation. Hopefully today is like the last day that people are going to build this kind of stuff up there. If we deny this, then maybe people will realize that we're serious about the future of Coal Valley and the neighborhood there and the people who are purchasing there. You mentioned their reasoning was to maximize the yard space and flat land. I mean, when you purchase a property, I mean, you can do more or less what you want, I guess, to your property, but just you got to consider your neighborhood and your neighbors, and I don't feel like any of that's been happening with these properties, so I will support the recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I think we wouldn't want to condone a similar chain reaction that we have seen on Bolton Street. And that's sort of what we're looking at here. If this wall stays as is, then the next phase of development will have to continue on with that and breaking bylaws. So yeah, I don't support that. I do feel for the property owners. I don't think that we have a letter here from the realtor who sort of made false promises, I guess, based on the fact that he told the property owner that they would have a level backyard, but I think the realtor didn't do his due diligence and see that that the retaining wall was not to correct specifications according to bylaw, and so there is some onus there. And of course, the builder of the wall himself, who I think is also one of the applicants for a variance of another property coming up. Obviously, there's a huge onus there, and maybe it falls on the property owner, unfortunately. But I think that then they have to go back to that person who built that wall and rectify that situation among themselves. So yeah, I support what staff have put forward, that we don't want the overheight wall at the back, but that we could approve the wall on the side property. Thanks.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thank you. I think, I feel like this is a completely different situation than the Bolton Street scenario. There are no neighbors. There's no adjacent property right next to the wall, so there is lots of room to redo landscaping. There's room to get machinery in. There's room to remedy this situation. I think you're right that if we allow these to go forward, then the next phase is set up to be needing the same thing to match that retention of height. And I think, well, I understand that each property owner is trying to maximize their flat yard and view and landscaping. There are many, many examples of beautiful properties that are not flat, and they add quite a bit of interest and character to a neighborhood. And I believe one of the walls up there is like 16 feet tall after the blocks. If you add a fence, I mean, it's just, it's too much. And I don't really see a justification for that if there's a way to remedy the situation and create a friendlier neighborhood. So I'm happy to deny.
And I am also supporting the recommendation of staff. I think it needs to stop now before anything else is done that we would have to address later on. So someone like to make the motion, please?
I'll move that council deny the application for the 2.3 meter wall on the north property line, 2021-15 DV for the property legally described as Lot 26, DL 24, Plan EPP 95109, 2415 Beaumont Avenue, and that council approve the application for the 1.5 meter wall on the east property line for the property legally described as Lot 26, DL 24, Plan EPP 95109, 2415 Beaumont Avenue.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the report development variance permit 2411 Beaumont Crescent.
Receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
So 2411 Beaumont Crescent is the lot adjacent to the next yet to be developed phase of Cove Valley. The application is to vary the height of a retaining wall on the north and the northwest property line from 1.2 meters to 3 meters. The recommendation is to deny the variance.
Councillor Sullivan?
I agree with the recommendation. I mean, you look at this wall, that's ridiculous. That's not very neighborly or aesthetically pleasing or bylaw following.
Councillor,
So good.
Councillor Kettler?
Yep, same. I agree with the recommendation.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, this is the one with the, it'll be, whatever, 16 feet with a fence, so.
Councillor Sproul?
I agree with the recommendation.
I agree with the recommendation. Would someone like to make the motion?
Sure, I'll move the council deny the application 2021-15 DV for the property legally described as Lot 25, DL 24, Plan EPP 95109, 2411 Beaumont Avenue.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the report development variance permit 2486 Beaumont Crescent.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Now this one isn't one of the three because we organized the agenda in numerical order along the same street. This one is bouncing to that fourth lot that is not adjacent to the other three. Would you want to skip ahead to the next report, or shall I just continue with this one?
Continue with this
Okay.
one.
Thank you. So this is an application to vary the height of retaining wall on the east property line and the north property line from between 1.5 meters to 2.3 meters. And the recommendation is to deny the variance.
Would somebody just like to make the motion? Or do you want to speak to it? Nope, go.
So, I move that council deny the application 2021-14 DV for the property legally described as Lot 19 DL 24, Plan EPP 95109, 2486 Beaumont Avenue.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the report Development Variance Permit 2510 Kendall Avenue.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
This is the third and final property where there's the 3 in a row with the rear retaining wall on Lindale Avenue. The application is to vary the height of a retaining wall from 1.2 meters to 2.3 meters, and the recommendation is to deny the variance.
Did you want to speak? Yes.
I will just to say, again, moving forward, that hopefully this is a warning to future developers, future home purchasers. Everybody must do their due diligence. Breaking bylaws on purpose is not suggested. And yeah, I'm happy to follow the recommendation. Anyone else?
Go for it.
I'll move the council deny the application 2021-17 DV for the property legally described as Lot 27, DL24, Plan EPP 95109, 2510 Kendall Avenue.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive Development Permit 2872 Ulverston Avenue.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, so this variance application for 2872, oh, sorry, I have variances. I have
Everywhere.
variances on my brain. This is actually development permit for 2872 Ulverston Avenue, and it's a referral to the Advisory Planning Commission. The village has received an application for a residential infill development permit to allow the construction of a new accessory dwelling unit on 2872 Ulverston Avenue. So the purpose of this report is to request a referral to the Advisory Planning Commission for comment on the application. The property owners of 2872 Ulverston Avenue wish to construct a 525 square foot ADU at the rear of the property. The gross floor area of the proposed ADU is less than 75% of the GFA of the single-family dwelling, approximately 51%, as required by zoning bylaw 1027. The application and supporting documents comply with the development area guidelines and zoning bylaw requirements. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, I was just wondering if this is the first ADU that we've had in that subdivision.
I don't think I've personally processed an application on Ulverston for an ADU, but I can't speak to before my time.
Okay. Just interesting to see if the size of those lots can have them, I guess, then we will likely see more applications from that area. Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I had a similar question. I believe it is the first one. And it's a small one. It's only 500 and something square feet, so that's likely why. So we're not at, or the recommendation is not to have a public, a neighborhood meeting. Should we be considering that, given it's the first one in the neighborhood? Or what are, I know that a sign needs to go up and notice. I just want to make sure that people have an opportunity. I know it's complicated, but.
I just wanted to confirm that I haven't received the picture that they've put it on site, but I have sent them the signed template,
Okay.
and the letter has gone out already.
Okay, and we haven't heard anything?
No.
Okay,
I have had a couple of questions, just not necessarily comments, but just asking, is it going to be an Airbnb or who's going to live there? Which obviously we don't regulate, so I've just provided them with the information as to what the zone allows.
okay.
One
Okay.
day we will.
One
Someone-
day we will, I'll move it. That council refer the application for a development permit on property described as Lot 15 DL 24 Plan VIP 77088 2872 Ulverston Avenue to the Advisory Planning Commission for recommendation.
Seconder. Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Next, that council receive the temporary use permit application 4693 Cumberland Road referral to APC report.
Move receipt.
All in favor? Carried.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This works. The application before you is a application for a temporary use permit at 4693 Cumberland Road, which is the location of Hartley's Garage. As you will probably remember, the owner applied to rezone that property in early 2019 to commercial use, which would have allowed a broader range of uses than just the garage. And that application was denied by council. However, council directed staff then to suggest to the owner that he might want to apply for a temporary use permit to permit the use of that property. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but on what's the past history, just to say that it's a non-conforming use under the current zoning bylaw. It used to be permitted as a home occupation in a previous home zoning bylaw, and that unfortunately no longer applies. So the owner cannot carry on auto repair as a home occupation. Also moved off the property for a while and lost that non-conforming status. Could have been retained if an employee had lived on the property, working the home occupation, but that didn't apply either. The village received a couple bylaw complaints, and that's why the situation was investigated at the time. So with respect to the temporary use permit option that council suggested for the applicant, the policies in the OCP do permit for a temporary use permit to be issued anywhere in the village, so that the area for temporary use permits can be restricted, but the potential is there for anywhere in the village. And the one criteria that applies to this most is that the appropriateness of the viability of the use. It's premature to decide upon that, and I think that would be the case in here, because we're looking at an OCP review in the future where perhaps commercial at that intersection is an appropriate use. And then there's also a number of criteria when considering temporary use permits in the OCP, which I outlined in the report, and the application needs generally compatibility of the proposal with adjacent uses. I'm saying that because we haven't received any complaints in response to our mail out to the neighbors. About 12 neighbors attended, and were generally in support of the application. The other criteria was the intensity of the proposed use, or as it is right now, it's a fairly low-key, I would say. It's Monday to Friday, between 9 to 5. He's operating between 9 to 5, not on weekends. And then the inability to conduct the proposed use on land elsewhere in the village. That is generally, it's difficult to probably find another lot that allows for auto repair. I think once the Bevan industrial site area becomes more developed, there's potentially for more land would open up for that kind of use, especially one that's maybe more intense and could potentially expand. So the temporary use permit is attached to this report. And we've included temporary use permits can include conditions or requirements, and generally so what we've included as a requirement before it's actually issued is payment of outstanding municipal tickets, and then also just posting a sign so it's clear which entrance to use. There's kind of 2 exits and entrances of the site. And then you can temporary use permits can also impose requirements on the use. And generally, staff just looked at what's happening there now, and it, like I said, it is still residential. There's residential neighbors to either side in the back of the property. So to try and restrict the use to not grow beyond what it is now. And that was discussed with the applicant. Asked him what his operating hours are. So we said, we proposed 8 to 5 Monday to Friday, and not on weekends, and restrict the repairing of automobiles outside of those hours. we also included requirements that we have for home occupations, such as no shipping containers on a residential property holding a business license, and then the limit to the number of employees that are permitted. So those all come from the home occupation regulations. In this case, this proposal, the OCP amendment and rezoning application 2019 went to the APC. At that point, the APC recommended for spot rezoning that would just allow the automotive repair as an accessory use. So they were supportive of it continuing. So in this case, it's council's decision. We are recommending referral to the Advisory Plan Commission because membership has changed, not significantly. So it is really at your discretion, obviously, if you wish to refer or not. I think 2 members have left and there's 1 new member. So so if you wish to get the recommendation of the Advisory Plan Commission, that's what the recommendation says right now. The other thing that, even if you wanted to approve it today, you can't. And that's because temporary use permits require posting in an advertisement in the newspaper. So the referral also allows us to do that. But you could choose to have it come back to a future meeting, not through the referral.
Okay. Councillor Sproul?
Well, I think that this is the simplest resolution to the situation. I mean, I don't know how the neighbours feel about the whole thing, but as far as I remember living here, there's always been a garage, as we would call it, on this corner, and I don't think it's that easy to get places to operate. So it looks like he's trying to keep up with the demands, like fixing things, making it look better. So I'm all for trying to give what support we're able to, and temporary use seems to be like the best solution.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Sproul. Their fence looks great, so I'm happy to move this forward to the APC.
Councillor Kettler?
So I appreciate the work that staff have done, and I like the way that they've set up the parameters of the temporary use permit. I understand their points about it not necessarily fitting the use of that tool, but then the way I see it as intended, it would just be temporary until he finds another place, because we've already denied the OCP amendment and the rezoning, and it was clear then that the neighbors didn't want that to be a commercial corner. So I don't see that changing within the maximum length of this permit, which is 3 years. So I would grant this on the basis that the understanding that the business would be moved to somewhere that is appropriate for that use of fixing automotives. So I do also support sending it to the APC and welcome their feedback on that. Thanks.
Councillor Brown?
Yes, thank you. It's nice to see this moving forward. I know it's been a lot of work on behalf of staff, so thank you for that. I think one of the things that makes Cumberland is that we have access to many services within our village, and I am concerned that we would allow the increased density of residents and the change in ownership in residents, in other words, the gentrification of that area, to push out a long-standing business that's been operating with goodwill in the community for 30 years. I think it's a brilliant opportunity to have a look at what we do in this area in the next OCP review, because there are other uses along that way that are also non-conforming. And I think it's essential as we grow to maintain walkability, and so having a service station where you can drop off your car and walk home in the community is very, very accessible, and I'm happy to help this move forward and continue this use.
Thank you very much. I too support the recommendations from staff. I think this is a very good use of that property, and the facility has been well used by the residents of Cumberland, and we need these businesses to operate in the village. So I will support this.
So I'll move that council refer the application for a temporary use permit 2021-01 TUP to permit an automotive facility at 4693 Cumberland Road, property legally described as Lot A, District Lot 24, Plan VIP 56393, to the Advisory Planning Commission for comment.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the proposed development of a recreation, arts, and culture master plan report.
Move receipt.
All in favor? Carried.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the report I'm here to present tonight is a proposal for pursuing a recreation and arts and culture master plan. It's something that I understand has been discussed for several years, including as recently as this spring's council strategic planning session. And with available COVID restart funds and the opportunity to engage a sector that has been significantly impacted by the pandemic, staff propose that now is an opportune time to proceed. I will just comment that there's a little bit of a redundancy just in coordinating council reports here, and so if council would like to consider this amongst the rest of the potential COVID restart plans, then that's something you could do when Kaylin presents the next report. But anyway, in terms of the proposed scope of work for the plan, we're proposing something quite comprehensive in nature that would include significant engagement with residents and stakeholders. There's a large number of very passionate folks and organizations in our community that would fit within the scope of this plan. And essentially the results would be a roadmap for the village in delivering recreation, arts, and culture services for the years to come. So this is everything from special events, programs, events, classes, rentals, policies, etc. And as part of that, we're also proposing that the plan could include some work in facility evaluation and potential conceptual planning and design as part and parcel of some other work that's ongoing related to properties. And so, yeah, lots more details in the report. Happy to answer any questions. I would just comment I'd also include a couple other details on what it's not, and that's not intended to be, a parks and trails master plan or anything around the village trail network. It's very much focused on the recreation culture side of things, but of course there is a strong parks component in some of the events and programs that are run there. So, yeah, any questions? I'm here. And we've also, I should introduce Ryan Parton has joined us this evening. There he is back there, our recreation and culture supervisor.
Thank you very much. Questions from members of council? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So really happy to see that this will be pulling together a bunch of stuff that we've done before. The rec center renovation study and the village master park and childcare spaces and age-friendly assessment, and hopefully put it all together so that we can have a strategy of how to use and implement all those things. The one concern I have is it looks like it is a bit of a paper study, so it is pulling together those things. And so the cost of it, I'm just wondering, where do you see the bulk of that 70,000 going? Do we have to do a significant amount of public engagement, or?
I think the research we did was probably a little bit more than half, 2/3 would go towards the planning, public engagement, report development. And then, as I mentioned in the report, we have tried to propose a budget for the project that would enable us to sink our teeth a little bit more into some of the facility work. recognizing, as you mentioned, that there is, you know, a previous report done on the recreation center. So it would address, you know, how do these facilities either fit into the plan, or alternatively, what are some conceptual plans and ideas for alternatives? And I should note that it's more than just the recreation center and the cultural center. We're also looking at the Centennial Building in Village Park. That's been an item in the Village Park master plan that's been hard to move forward, because how much of a kind of recreation center offerings are we trying to do down there? So that's something to consider. We have the Horseshoe Club building, we have the Ball Diamond, washrooms in those. Like there's a lot of facility component. There's been conversations about you know, outdoor classrooms or band shell. Is that what you're looking for, Councillor Sullivan?
Ice hockey. Ice hockey, I think I was
Ice
going to
hockey
mention.
facilities. There's an expensive one that if we want to broach that topic, that's
Under $1 million.
That will cost a bit of money. So, I guess, long story short, is we've tried to propose a budget that it would enable us to initiate some of that work as well.
Great, thanks so much.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much. I think you're right. There's arts and culture have taken a big hit, and the recent resurgence of events in the community has been amazing to see. And I think it's time we gave the arts and culture community an opportunity to tell us what they need, and try and find some you know, readily available programming space or creative space, or who knows what that is that they need. Maybe it's band shell, maybe it's not. But yeah, I think the public consultation, I think you're right. We have a lot of interested people in this, and we should do some fulsome consultation and make sure we hear from everybody. So thank you.
Councillor Sproul?
I just want to say thank you. It's so good to see that we have some kind of framework that we can build on, and some budget allocations. And I've certainly noticed here in Cumberland and down on the other place I live, Gabriola, every time there's any live music now or anything, it's just packed with people. The appetite right now for culture and music is so strong after being locked away in our homes. So I'm glad to see this being a beginning. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, I think we saw that last couple weekends in town with live music in the streets and people in the streets. The COVID restart funding is perfect opportunity to, I like the word comprehensive. This is what we need for recreation and culture moving forward. I think bandshell is a perfect part of this, and also I will be talking more with the community about my thoughts about an ice rink that will stay frozen in the summer in Village, or this winter in Village Park, and we'll have a third sheet or fourth sheet of ice in the valley after. So hopefully there'll be more fulsome conversations about stuff like that moving forward. So I'm really excited about this report. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for your report. It's been on our strategic priorities list for a number of years, and council did decide this year that it would move forward, so I'm really happy to see that. I've really expressed my appreciation and how in-depth you're going and bringing all these things together for the community, because it is true that we need to have a plan to move forward. And it makes so much sense. And I think a side benefit is once we have the plan, the groups and organizations in the village that will use that information for grant writing. So I think it's a step in a very positive direction for all. So thank you. So would somebody like to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll move the council allocate $70,000 in COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant for local government funds to fund the development of a recreation, arts, and culture master plan.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. The council received the COVID-19 Restart Funding Report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Your Worship, councils. Nice to be in front of you again in person. We have another iteration in front of you of our COVID restart funding report. As always, it goes through and identifies the projects that you've identified and put money forward from the restart funding. Gives you a total of spend to date and how much is committed. And as well, as we see, there's from the top of our recommendations a list of a few things that we'd like to put forward, as well as sort of a synopsis of ideas that we're still working on in the background. So I'd also like just to, I know Kevin's already taken a bit of a step of moving it forward, but I'd also like to add my 2 cents from the economic development perspective. Arts and culture is a piece with the strategy, and one of the tricky things is how do I do a small piece of it? And this all-encompassing study is going to do an important part to allow us to move that strategy forward, mostly, as the mayor said, of organizing our arts and culture community, but also having an understanding of our facilities and everything that goes into it, so we can really focus on creating infrastructure that supports these arts and culture producers, and it gives us that whole holistic approach to it. So thank you for that recommendation. Beyond that, we've got a couple other things to talk about. One is about $5,425 to be allocated towards putting automated or timed door locks down in the washrooms at the Cumberland Rec Center parking lot. As your report notes, this gives us an opportunity to not have staff go down and monitoring, opening and closing those things, and they can be done on their own time. Secondly, is allocating $30,000 towards some of these annual fees related to the new IT infrastructure, including fiber optics and some other types of software and updating programs that we have. And since it's still COVID right now, it seems like a good opportunity for 2022 to be allocated from this funding. So other than that, it's a summary of what's been done to date. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Brown, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, thanks, Kaylin. This is great. I have a question about the IT funds. So these are annual funds, so eventually we'll have to find another source for them. This is just bridge financing?
That was my understanding, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, just want a little bit more information about those timed door locks. Are we piloting those, or are there other examples of them being used in other communities?
Maybe I'll jump in there. Thank you. This is currently right now we have contract security groups that would come down and lock the doors. There is a lot of regional parks, community parks that have moved to this as a safe and effective way of actually securing those sites. And also there's a timer on it that in the morning it'll unlock it and allow whatever time, let's say 7 in the morning, it'd be unlocked. And in the evening it would lock it. It's also secure. You can actually, if you were, for example, locked, you just push the door and it allows you out. So it is now a very common system that's put in high volume, high use facilities. We still will have our staff visit the site on their regular periods to do cleaning and so forth, but it's a system that has worked really effectively in a lot of areas, and it reduces having to have like I said, a security group come down there and do those checks. We still will have some security down there, but it will not be. If it isn't available, those facilities will be locked and secure. So yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. I have another question. So I'm grateful that we've had this funding, I guess, to start with, this COVID funding, and it has allowed us to be in this room today with the technology that is live streaming us now. So that's wonderful. I do support money going toward the community grant program for 2022. But I'm also concerned that we will have some big budget requests coming out of a major infrastructure project, that is our sewer upgrades. We heard from the consultant today, but we didn't hear any numbers. And so when we're talking about allocating reserve funds, then I'd like to hear what those numbers are before we make some major decisions on other funding that we're doing. Thanks.
Councillor Sproul?
Well, I think they're pretty fair allocations that are suggested, some of these ideas, and of course, lots of things already complete, pages 250, 251. So, if it is intended for restart funding, then I think we could move ahead with some of this. If we find that we need more monies in another area, then we'll, I don't know, just have to find it elsewhere. There still is some money left over from this. I can't remember how much, but there is still some funds after we.
$449,000.
Okay.
Yes, Councillor Saw?
Yeah, just to carry on from Councillor Kettler's thought there, is the restart fund eligible to fund things like delays in the building of the?
We would have to check, but I would say, you know, initially no, but I think the way that the information that we've been receiving is what we've been trying to do is look at ways of reducing other costs that are so such as I'll use community grant. That's one of the reasons why we put that one on there, and so reduce the costs there. Potentially that fund, if required through the budgets discussions and council wishes to direct it to go somewhere else. So we're trying to maximize the use of this funds for things that are eligible, but also could potentially positively impact, you know, the other challenges within our financial, you know, process.
Okay. And for the door locks, yeah, I live down there, so I see that security person all the time, and I always kind of think about options. So is that 4K the savings? Is that per year?
That's a one time, that's the cost of the locks and installation.
No, but okay, but it says the operational savings and the removal of the use of the security form is over 4K. I guess that's just per year. Yeah. Okay. And I was also surprised to see $30,000 a year for IT, but when you get all fancy and new, I guess that's what happens. And I'm happy that we have these capabilities now, because you guys can watch the internet and come down for your reports right on time. It's perfect. That happened in other communities, and I was happy to see Kevin and you guys walk in at a reasonable time instead of spending staff hours sitting here waiting for your turn. I think it's going to pay off in no time, that 30 Gs. Anyways, thanks very much.
I agree with all your requests. The last one is, I would like to see more where we stand financially before we put any money into the community grant and aid program. I think we need to be prepared that this is not over with yet, and we still don't know what else is coming down the pipe. So we need to be very cautious of what we do. And so, yes, I'll wait.
Thank you, Your Worship. And then, sorry, when we went through the recommendations, I kind of skipped over the grant and aid, and we've asked for you to refer this back to staff so that we can give you a more fulsome report on, you know, we have a list of projects down the road, we have some other ideas we want to do, and so it's not just a matter of how much should we put in, but what's the best way to go about it, and where's this funding best come from?
Okay. So, yes?
Just had a follow-up. Hoping that we would include this bundle of money in our budget process next month, that would be part of the considerations.
It is, and just like it was last year as well. So whatever projects, so for example, the picnic tables, anything like that would be eligible, we have included that as potential funding. So some of of that 400,000, that'll also be considered during budget deliberations, and we can present that information to council.
Yeah, and I remember council doing some brainstorming about potential, like I think we had some sort of list maybe last year, and if anybody is able to recover that. Not this list, this looks like a staff list, but I can't remember which meeting it was at. I apologize. It could have been probably budget, I imagine.
Yeah, we certainly can take a look. I'll talk to our CFO and see what information was brought forward, so, yeah.
Yes.
This, and the intent here is that this report, similar it's been, we've been bringing this about every 2 months, and it's both to, we don't know what the next wave looks like here, so we're protecting against that, so the village is in a good position, which I think we've been able to manage that way. But we also don't want to wait till the very end when we've got, needs right now that, again, about the organizational resiliency, and I think that's been really evident in how we've been able to get to today, with a lot of our projects. So we'll report back, to be honest, at this point in time, it's probably almost be monthly, and there may be one project too, and also during the financial planning period we'll be doing as well.
Okay. Someone like to make the motion then?
That council that council allocates 70,000 in restart funding towards the development of a comprehensive recreation, arts and culture master plan. That council allocate 5,425 in restart funding towards the installation of automated timed door locks on public washroom doors at the Cumberland Recreation Center parking lot. That council allocates 30,000 in restart funding towards the village's 2022 annual fees related to the IT infrastructure upgrades, completed fiber optic and IT upgrade related licensing fees, and that council directs staff to report back to council on options to utilize restart funding in support of the village's 2022 community grant and aid program.
All in favor? Carried. Next, recommend that council receive the Stage 2 water restrictions termination report.
Where's the?
All in favor? Carried. We're getting everybody tonight.
Who's who? Staff today. It's a good welcome back for everybody.
Well, this will be the shortest report. This one's pretty straightforward.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone, and this report's really seeking council's authority per the water conservation bylaw to rescind stage 2 water restrictions. I will mention that staff probably early 2022 take another look at the bylaw to maybe remove this requirement to actually rescind them stage 2 or stage 3 when we're confident water levels have recovered or will be recovering. So, but for now, we're just seeking council's approval tonight to terminate stage 2 and roll back into stage 1, which will then fall off or per the bylaw not be applicable per October 1st. So.
Okay. Somebody would like to make the motion? Or did you have a question, Councillor?
Well, just comment how wonderful, we had the most driest period of time, and we've really only gone as far as stage 2, so kudos to everybody involved at managing it all, and to the people of Cumberland who obviously have been sparing in their use of water. So anyway, I'll move that council terminate stage 2 water restrictions effective September 28th, 2021.
Second.
Seconder, and then we'll open the discussion. Go ahead, seconder?
Somebody did, I think.
Yes. Okay,
just are we-
any further discussion?
Are we going to go for Rob's suggestion of changing this so that we don't, this seems like a superfluous bylaw for us to tell Rob that the water's okay.
I think staff will actually bring a report back to council with
do we have
some
to move?
recommendations early
Do we
early
move
next
that you
year.
do that or no?
No,
Okay.
it
I
will be
don't
done.
think so, no. Excellent.
Okay. So someone like to make the first?
No, we did.
Second, all in favor, carried. Thank you very much.
We can just comment really quick on some of the water levels. Clinton's got some more detailed information here.
Our operators, just out of interest for council, so just this was as of this afternoon, Stevens Lake water level currently rising. It's as of this afternoon 6 feet 10 inches. So the low was on September 7th was 4 feet 4 inches. So significant increase in a short period. Hamilton Lake full and spilling. Number 2 dam full and spilling. Henderson Lake full and spilling. So they're all capacity. The one which is typical from our utility operators, Allen Lake, is just beginning to recover. So because it's lowest in the system, there takes up time. So that one is the one that we'll be expect start seeing filling in the coming weeks here. So, but do you guys?
And it still had, Allen Lake still had quite a bit of remaining capacity. Of course, it's the lowest lake in our lowest reservoir in all our watersheds, so it doesn't see the impact sometimes from the rain we get in the hills, like Cumberland Creek side does, but usually Cumberland Creek recovers fairly quickly once we get into the rainy season. Yeah, looking good.
The well is good to go.
Well's good.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Bylaws? Someone like to
I'll
move?
move that council give second and third reading to permissive tax exemption 2022 bylaw number 1151, 2021.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. No new business, notice, motions, and announcement. Wastewater treatment plant site tours, 2934 Ulverston, Tuesday, September 28th, from 5:30 to 6:30. Wednesday, September 29th, from 2 to 3. And please wear closed-toed shoes. Wastewater treatment plant open house, council chambers, Wednesday, September the 29th, at 6 to 8 p.m. Masks are required for this event. We have question period now. Please send your questions by email to info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period. And note, please limit to questions only. Comments will not be read.
Sorry, Your Worship. Ulverston,
What's Ulverston?
water wastewater treatment plant site tour.
Yes, that's what the address is. Ulverston.
Oh,
Yes.
wow, I learned something today.
So we have to wait. Is there any questions from the audience? Would you please come up to the seat? Or is it, no, their mic would be great. Thank you.
Mayor and councilors, myself and my wife are the owners of 2415 Beaumont Crescent. It was my understanding, and it's actually when we first viewed the lot, our lot is at grade. That was the original grade. There's just a retaining wall holding it back. You had mentioned earlier, Councillor Sullivan, that you're setting a precedence, right? And I agree, you are. When you go up our street, you're going to get more and more of those sandy rock cliffs. I don't even know how they're going to develop it without putting a wall in. To terrace us back, our wall is engineered. It is drained properly. With all this influx of rain that we've been having, we have not had any issues. I see also in town that like if you look at above the fan house on Kendall, way higher wall, the drainage comes out onto somebody else's property. Why isn't that one part of this as well? Like, where's the precedence? That's what I'm not understanding here. To terrace my yard, how far back does it have to get terraced?
Those are questions that I assume our planning department would answer.
Because it's easy to say here that, we'll just terrace everything, but it's not that easy of a question. Now we're going to result in, you're destroying the engineering wall, the weeping tile, the drainage. Like, we've gone through all the hoops with it. I've talked to all my neighbors. Nobody has any complaints about it. So I'm wondering where the complaint is coming from that you talked about the public. And I've looked for these things and I can't find them. I would really like council to reconsider the variance on our property, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Is there any questions in the email, Rachel? Thank you very much. Oh,
I just have one quick question. What do you guys think a reasonable timeline is for something that's out of compliance to be recognized and then sent to council? So in the case of the walls, we're 2411. That wall, we bought the property. We have no control over how the builder builds the walls. We buy it before there's even a wall there. That wall was built a year ago, and the building, it was submitted in January, I believe, was when the engineering report was submitted. So I'm just understanding, why did it take till now for that to come to council, and what's a reasonable length of time, given that you guys have inspectors up there regularly on these properties?
You're asking me a question that I have no answer for at this time, but I'll look into it and see. Because I know they came before the other ones, and sorry, I can't remember. Clayton, can you help me? We dealt with this before, and we chose not to deal with the retaining walls at that point. Did we not?
Well, the ones I believe you're referring to are the ones on Bolton that
Bolton.
council had requested to put them together as a package there. So that was in the spring there that the initial one came, and then it was requested that they come together. You know, certainly something. I mean, every variance is different in the sense of when those requests come in. That's, you know, typically not until it's picked up by either an inspector or the staff is when, once we've noted it, then usually we will begin that process of engaging either developer, builder at that point in time. But there's no, I wouldn't say there's any specific timelines on what that process might look like.
So if a building permit is submitted that is outside, that would require a variance, wouldn't that trigger some type of notification that a variance is required, not 4 months later? Which it sounds like the timelines were. I'm just trying to understand. I haven't been able to give clear timelines, but it sounds like a building permit was submitted in January and no requirement was given for 4 months, which now leaves the current homeowners on the hook for it because we had to take possession of our homes.
So your worship, I think we'd have to look at that particular file because the building permit's sometimes not connected to the walls. We'd have to look at the file and determine when that first notice was provided to the village. I don't know that file. We'd have to determine what that is.
Okay. And part of the problem was also that during COVID, a lot of things got missed. And I know it's not an excuse, but we were limited in our staff. There was a big turnover in our staff. So I'm not sure, but I will get back to you with some answers to your questions.
Thank you.
And we are not going in camera, are we? No, no. So, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Okay, we're still on. We're still on.